Hey everyone, welcome to our webinar today. We're very excited to have you here with us. Today we're going to be talking about estate planning and everything about really that encompasses and entails. So we're very excited to have you here with us today on this event. Now, a lot of times when we think of estate planning, our mind first goes to really the legal side of things. What are the documents that we should have that should be in place? Who are our beneficiaries, right? Who's listed as the beneficiary? Who's going to receive what asset? And how are they going to be divided? But we also want to talk to you about, what can we do from an investment standpoint? And how can we look at estate planning really from all levels? So, our goal here today is, we'd really like to answer everyone's questions, but we know that in a group setting, like we're here today through this webinar, that's going to be pretty difficult. But we do want to create, a basis for everybody, no matter what stage you are at in this planning process. We've been doing these events for quite a while, and people come into our office, and we realize that a lot of people are just starting out on their estate planning journey. And others are a bit more seasoned and they put in some time and work already. But really, wherever you are at in the process, we think this event today is a great stepping stone, and that'll help you to get to the next step of where you need to be. So it's really going to help create a kind of a foundation of what you can expect and what you can do as you go forward and try to create your own estate plan. So we're excited to again, be here with you. Everyone will have an opportunity after this event to schedule some time to meet with us on either a one-on-one appointment, a Zoom, a phone call, but everybody will have an opportunity, if you'd like, to meet with myself or my partner, Josh. So that's something that you can look forward to. Actually, I think you just saw pop up in the corner there. It says, I would like a strategy session. So that'll pop up different times throughout the event. Very easy. You can click on that. It'll take you to our calendar, and it allows you to schedule some time when the time and date line with our calendar. So we're excited to be able to see you guys, and hopefully you can take advantage of that. Also, we are very knowledgeable and take a very proactive approach to estate planning, also Social Security planning, tax planning. In fact, there are people on this webinar today that joined us last week that were in our taxes and retirement webinar. So, we feel like all these areas work together and kind of need to be addressed at the same time. So we're excited to be able to share this event with you today. Now, due to COVID, typically we're doing these type of events in person, and you get to meet us and get to know us on a little bit deeper level maybe, but we are excited that we still have the technology available to have these type of events, even when things are going on that don't allow us to meet in person. So, that's why we're all here today on a webinar type of setting. But we also want you guys to know we want to be respectful and mindful of your time. So today's event is really supposed to be and should be about an hour long. So if you were curious or wondering, how long we'll be on this meeting to get together today, right about an hour. So we'll kind of go through that with you. And you might be wondering, what's the 5, 6, 7 all about? You got some advertising. You're here today on the call. Estate planning 5, 6, 7. What the heck is 5, 6, 7 mean? So as I mentioned earlier, we've done and used to do a lot of Social Security planning events. And really up until a few years ago, if you're a married couple, there were 567 different ways to file for Social Security benefits. Now, that's a lot of different ways to file, and in reality, you only get to choose one, right? So it can be overwhelming, and people wanted to really delve deeper and understand, hey, what's the best way for me and my unique, specific situation? Well, estate planning really isn't any different. In fact, there's unlimited ways to set up an estate plan because everybody's different. Every family situation is unique. So we want to give you, again, some concepts, but again, everyone's is going to be a little bit different than the next, and hopefully we'll be able to help you start that process. Now, this is our disclosure. We're required to put this up, but really what it boils down to, what it's saying is that today's presentation isn't designed to provide specific recommendations, more on a general basis. So that's what that 1 hour time is going to be used for, that you can really, meet with us and we can answer specific questions. There is a question and answers tab. So on your screen on the right, throughout the presentation today, if you do have a question that's not very, very specific, but kind of more of a general question, go ahead and type that out. If we have time, we'll get to it. Again, we've got a lot of people on our event today, so based on how many questions we get throughout our webinar, we'll try to get to as many as we can. Now, I want to take a little bit of time here, and see there. But today really isn't meant to be a sales pitch or really to promote us or our firm, but in reality, we're here on an education basis and want to give you guys as much information as possible. We do want to spend a little bit of time today just kind of introducing ourselves, because we want to tell you guys that we are knowledgeable and we are qualified to speak on these topics. But really, it's about educating, and explaining to you guys what we've learned from our day-to-day job, what we've seen. Think of us as, as financial planners. Think of us as financial planners. We're kind of in the trenches, so to speak, right? And we're day-to-day, we're seeing what people are going through and some pitfalls that have occurred. So we want to bring our knowledge and our expertise to you guys to make sure that, you're getting the best information possible. So we'll take just a small moment here, a little bit of time to introduce ourselves. I'm Colin Redinger, as you can see with my name there. Josh Blaker is my partner, and he'll be up here presenting as well. And our firm is Accrue Wealth Designs. So we're excited to have that. And again, our day-to-day job, financial planners, we're really helping clients set up retirement plans. We've been featured in Kiplinger, we've been on ABC 15, and we are accredited with the Better Business Bureau. So again, that's just a little bit about us, but we really want to focus today on this education platform. And again, teach you some of the common mistakes that we've seen, and what are some common documents that people could have had that would have helped save the day. So again, we've had lots of people come through the doors, come into our office, share experiences with us that, oh man, if we would have had this one document, that would have saved us so much time and effort and energy. So we'll share some experiences with you today. Again, you could completely avoid this webinar, go straight to the horse's mouth, Google search estate planning attorneys and set up an appointment with an attorney, right? Another thing that we've learned, and why we're glad you're here today, is that, and we work with estate planning attorneys, and so we value that relationship, but most attorneys are set up in a way that they get paid hourly. And if you're just beginning your journey or your process in creating an estate plan, and you show up at an estate planning attorney's office, there's going to be a lot of time dedicated in the beginning to, you'll be overwhelmed and bombarded with questions. Sometimes questions you never thought of or may not have a response to right away. And so this will also help save some time there and some money, to where if you are meeting with an attorney, you'll have a much better idea of what to expect and what to have prepared as you meet with those people. Now, our firm is set up in the standard is known as a fiduciary standard. And real simple, what that means is we're set up, we have a moral, legal, and ethical obligation to put your needs above that of our own, above that of a firm. And we're proud and grateful to be set up that way. There was a reason we did that. So we're always putting our clients' needs first. Part of that is an education process. And on the webinar today, we've got clients that have been with us for years and some new clients that are here just, getting some additional information and learning. So, but that's again how we're set up. As I mentioned earlier, but I'll touch on one more time, this is not meant to be a sales process, right? This is really meant to educate. So the three promises that we're going to make today is: number one, no selling; number two, no specific recommendations. Truly, if we're set up as a fiduciary, we can't give a recommendation without knowing you first. So that's what we take that 1 hour, appointment. We use that to really get to know you and your situation, to where then we can start to give recommendations. Now, we have a 5-step process at our firm at Accrue Wealth Designs. In that 5-step process, we focus on the 5 key areas to retirement planning. The first is income planning. From there, the investment plan. Look at tax planning, healthcare planning, and the 5th one, legacy planning, or also known as estate planning. They all work together. We can't have an estate plan without having an income plan, right? If you're a married couple today, and part of the estate plan should look at what happens if one spouse predeceases another, right? Well, if you look in the income plan there, what's the spousal plan? That's one of the bullet points, right? Or taxes. If we have a proper estate plan, we can save a lot of money in taxes, keep more in the family and less to the IRS. Healthcare, right? What if somebody needs long-term care in the future? So many things, encompass the estate plan. So again, those are the 5 key areas that we focus on. Today's event, we're going to primarily look at the estate plan, but hopefully if you are working with a financial advisor, or you're doing it yourself, all 5 of those key areas can and should be addressed. And then once again, this is, if you do click on that link that just popped up, and we don't recommend that you do it right now, but it will pop up a few times throughout the event. As you feel the need to, and you do want to set up an appointment, you'll click on that and it will take you to a screen that looks kind of like this. And again, that's just going to sync with our calendar, and that will allow you to choose somewhere as small as a 20-minute session, strategy session, up to an hour. And so we hope everybody will take advantage of that. And, we have 3 ways to meet with you on that first appointment. The first is just a phone call, where we can call you and get to know you a little bit better one-on-one. The second is through Zoom. So it's where we're going to share our computer screen with you. You'll see us like you do right now, but we'll get to see you as well. And that'll kind of be what we call a Zoom appointment. And the third is an in-office appointment. And we are still meeting people in the office. We take the precautions here to be as safe and healthy as possible, but we're having clients come in on a regular basis. And so you have all 3 of those options available. Now, I want to start off now with somebody that we're all probably familiar with, which is Prince, right? And a lot of times we think of celebrities, athletes, musicians, people that we know have a large amount of wealth, right? That have a big net worth. You would think logically, as successful and as much as they have, they would hire the right people to kind of manage their affairs. So Prince, at his death, his estate was estimated to be worth $300 million. Now, that's a lot. That's a ton. And again, if you have an estate worth $300 million, you would think, well, there should be a team in place to make sure things are looked at. Unfortunately, as great as he was as producing music, very, very poor planner with estate planning. As a result, he had no will, he had no living trust, he had no estate plan. And so since his death, over 2 years now of ongoing court administration, $6 million has already been paid to attorneys, with another $3 million that's been requested to get approved. That's $9 million that attorneys have already received or will receive. And if you notice, Prince's heirs or his family members still have not received one penny to date. So by not having the proper in place, you can see a lot of the mistakes and some of the problems that are occurring. Also, there's been a huge tax burden. So that's just a real example, kind of to the extreme, but nonetheless, we want to talk about what are these pitfalls, how can we avoid them? Now, if you're one of the people that does not have a estate plan in place, you're not alone. In fact, 55% of adults do not have a will. So there's 4 basic documents. You've got a will, a living will, a medical power of attorney, or a financial power of attorney. So those are the 4 documents that are very easily obtained. They're very inexpensive to have. Some people say, hey, you should get a living trust, and it will encompass all of that, but it's more expensive. In basic doc, you should have, those 4 that I just mentioned. But 55% of adults don't have a will. Now, one thing I want to clear up right now, a will does not help avoid or bypass probate. Okay? In fact, a will is a ticket to probate. So will not help you avoid probate. Probate, is the legal process of transferring assets that are in your name upon death over to them. So it's the legal, and that can take time, money, and all sorts of things. So if we can avoid that, we definitely want to. So with no will or trust in place, here's some things that you can expect. Official direction to guide your family. You may have specific wishes that you want your family to honor, right? You may be being, a large net worth, properties, also things that you have upon death, and you wonder that the estate goes into probate, which I just mentioned. Well, another problem there is anything that goes into probate is going to be public record, right? Well, you want to keep things as private as possible. So anything that goes to probate, again, is going to be public record. Creditors have easy access to make claims and no final message to family members. Now, you can have things listed with beneficiaries and other things, but to have no trust with no official direction, there's a lot of things that we will talk about, that can still happen even with named beneficiaries. Also, what about sudden incapacity? Now, this isn't something that's always fun to think about or popular, but we're here today to educate. We're here today to really wake you up and say, hey, these are some things that should be discussed, talked about, and looked at. What happens if you are suddenly incapacitated? What if you were in a coma for several months, right? Well, you want to make sure that someone knows what your medical wishes are, right? Somebody is appointed to make those decisions for you, that understands in your heart what those wishes would be. If you don't have the appropriate documents in place, no one has authority to handle your finances. So if you are incapacitated, that doesn't mean the bills stop, right? That doesn't mean, maybe you're a do-it-yourself investor. We see a lot of people that like to manage those affairs on their own. Maybe it's a husband and wife where the husband likes to take that role, but the wife doesn't. And, somebody was incapacitated for several months and the markets were having a big change. Maybe the markets were dropping or something, unexpected happened, like when it did in March with the pandemic. Who has access to make changes to those financial investments, right? So you don't want to spend that time where you could be making decisions and paying bills and things of that nature, but instead you're going through probate just to get somebody listed as a medical and financial power of attorney. Common estate planning problems. And some of this is repetitious of what I've just said, but it is important, and we hit on it a few times, that it starts to sink in. So again, no will or trust or advanced healthcare directives to provide guidance. Overlook provisions such as guardianship for minors. This may not be as popular with the group we're talking to today. Most on the call, I would assume, are 50 or older. A lot of you are already retired. So you may not have minors at home, but you could have a special needs that's still in the home. For me personally, I've got 4 kids ranging from 6 to 12. And if something happened to me and my spouse, I would want to make sure that my kids are looked after and taken care of and go to the person that I want. And I feel that would do the best job of raising them, right? So that's definitely something that would be addressed if you're a younger client. No privacy for your estate. There's no tax planning, right? If these aren't addressed, financial strains, timing of estate and settlement. Typically probate, that can take anywhere from 12 to 18 months if you have to go through that process. So, there's a lot of things that you want to look to avoid. And really the benefits of having an estate plan, to simplify it as much as I can, I would say is peace of mind. Peace of mind. It's not always the one that sets up the estate plan that gets to see the fruits of it, because unfortunately that person may be deceased. But you could set it up as a couple and the surviving spouse, right? We're dealing with a client right now that has come to us recently, and she just lost her husband, and she's going through this really slow, time-consuming, very frustrating process. Where had we met her years ago, she could be avoiding some of those situations right now. But again, benefits, it spells out healthcare wishes and decisions, right? Possessions go to heirs that you choose without dispute. And that's a big one. A lot of family members, when an estate plan isn't really set up the right way, we see a lot of times siblings that just fight, and great relationships can be destroyed. Sometimes we'll have a client come in that we just met, and maybe their parents just passed away, and these people are in their 60s, right? And so maybe their parents were in their 80s, but mom and dad just passed away. Now they're settling the estate, and nothing was written up. And certain siblings say, hey, I actually deserve more. Instead of dividing it equally, one sibling might say, hey, I spent my last 2 or 3 years with mom and dad helping them out in the home because of their health conditions. I deserve more. Well, was that really the parents' intent? If so, that should have been written out, right, and specified. So the people that receive the assets upon death, they don't always see eye to eye. And you don't want all this contention to kind of be created. Avoids additional unplanned legal expenses, provides liquidity readily available for financial affairs, which is very important, provides for loved ones not otherwise protected. So these are some things that having an estate plan can make a difference. What's missing though? It's easy to talk about the big things, your properties, your investment accounts, your IRAs, the banks, the checking savings accounts. That's kind of typical. But what are some other things that are intangible assets, right? Your values, health, spirituality. But to give you an example, how about, and I'll give you an example, a real life example of my own family. My great grandma passed away probably about 10 years ago now. And every year she would make this cake that I've never tasted or even, had anything that was even similar my whole life. Great cake, great frosting that we just love. It was our birthday because grandma would make this cake. Well, fortunately, before great grandma passed away, she passed on that family recipe to my sister. Now, every year on our birthdays, my sister now makes that cake and it tastes the exact same. That's an intangible asset, right? That's not something that most people would think to have listed in the estate plan, but those are some things that could be passed on to the next generation, things that are meaningful to the family. So as you meet with us on a one-on-one visit and we go through an estate plan with you, we can really dive very deep and say, hey, let's put in there as much as possible. So, it's kind of a twofold objective here. The first objective, passing on a family's tangible wealth and assets included in traditional estate planning. But the second objective is conveying your family's values, history, legacy to the next generation. Both are done for the benefit of the next generation. Also, in that same, mindset, what I was just talking about, people have garage sales, estate planning, or estate sales when people pass away. And it would be worth, a family taking the time to say, hey, this watch, for example, is very valuable. It's $1,000. That way somebody doesn't sell it at a garage sale for $20. So other things that can kind of go into the estate plan. Now, what makes a successful estate or legacy plan, right? And what should be looked at and addressed? Well, one, what's the spousal impact? Does the surviving spouse, have enough resources to live comfortably? Are they able to carry and manage the finances alone? And again, I'll give you another example. The client that we just met recently, that her husband passed away, they've got lots of different assets that had named beneficiaries. So for the most part, a lot of things were pretty easy and would transfer directly to the surviving spouse. One thing that she and her husband never thought of, all the credit cards, and think of this yourselves right now. How many of you today that are sitting here are married, right? And you have joint credit cards, right? Your credit card, you've got one and your wife's got another, and they have your names on it. Well, most people pay their bills right from their credit cards, as was the example that I'm going to share with you with this couple. Well, when the husband passed away and the surviving spouse notified the different banks that the husband passed away so she could change the accounts just into her name, they canceled every credit card. And she had no idea that was going to happen. She thought, hey, this is joint. Mine should stay the same. Every credit card was canceled, unbeknownst to her. All of a sudden, bills that get paid monthly are not getting paid, the water, electricity. She just lost her husband of 40 years, was having such a hard emotional time, and now she's dealing with having to get new credit cards set up. Thanks to COVID, and she was banking with Citibank, there wasn't one Citibank in the state of Arizona that was open. Everything has to be done over the phone. So having a heck of a time. So part of our process, like I mentioned earlier with our 5-step process, looking at the income plan, the investment plan, tax plan, healthcare, and estate plan, these are things that, had they met with us in advance, could have already been talked about. Again, we're on the front lines. We're in the trenches. We've seen the day-to-day pitfalls that happen, so we know what to look for, that we can really help you create this plan and make sure it's airtight. Children, are they prepared for their inheritance? I know a lot of times people don't want to talk about finances with their children, but if they are listed as beneficiaries, they need to know some things, and they need to understand, or at least have an idea of where to go, because otherwise it's months and months and months of children that are beneficiaries searching and looking for missing accounts, and they have no idea where to start. So there's a lot of things that needs to be talked about. You should have all your passwords. We live in a digital era. Even passwords to your Amazon account, to your Facebook account, your Sky Miles account that have a monetary value. These things need to be listed somewhere, and need to be addressed. So, part one here, there's another 5-step process that we talk about just with estate planning. Part one is plan for incapacity. So here's where you might want to start taking some notes. If you want to create your own estate plan all on your own, great. Or even just start to think of the questions. First one is plan for incapacity, right? What happens if you become incapacitated? Well, the 2 documents that you want to have, that you should have, is 1, the medical power of attorney, and 2, a financial power of attorney. These are very, very inexpensive documents that you can get. And with HIPAA, with hospitals, they're getting harder and harder to get any information from if you don't have these different medical power of attorney. So you want to make sure you've got those. 2, let's get organized. Again, we see time and time again, somebody passes away and the children come into our office and things are just, it's a mess. They're spread all over. Or a surviving spouse like we're dealing with right now. Lots of accounts spread all over the place. Well, if you can be as organized as possible, and like our clients would have what we call the wealth design blueprint. That's what I showed you early on in our presentation. If you've got this blueprint, something happens to you unexpectedly, whoever the beneficiaries are, they've got this cheat sheet, I'd call it, or a blueprint. Where are all the assets? Who do I contact, right? Where do we go? So you want to be as organized as possible to make that as easy as possible. Prepare for the real business of estate planning. Identify properties, so all those can be listed. You can have a living trust and make it very easy, or you can do things separate from that. But, we want to kind of walk you through how that process can be as simple as possible. So I'm going to bring Josh up here, and he's going to continue in this the next 30 minutes of our webinar. And so thanks for listening so far. And I'll have Josh come up.
All right. So like Colin was talking about, being organized. That's very important. And that's where a lot of mistakes that we see happen with financial planning and estate planning is you think in your mind what your wishes are, but you're not organized on paper to actually have it come to fruition. And a lot of estate planning attorneys, they charge an hourly rate. So if you have a visit with an attorney and you don't have all your documents in order and gone through a series of questions to find out what your true intentions are, that can be very expensive. So working with an advisor alongside the estate planning attorney, we can go through that process with you, make sure we have all the wishes and desires in your heart in order. That way, when you meet with the attorney, it's a quick and easy transition, costing you less money. But think about the people that you love and that you care about. The priority is to leave less to the IRS, more to the family and the people that you love. And we always want to make sure that the documents are in order and their beneficiaries are updated. And sometimes what we need to do is think about certain contingency plans. I've been a financial advisor over 20 years, and I've developed relationships with couples. And over time, instead of meeting with a couple, I'm meeting with a surviving spouse, a widow. So we want to make sure you've got a solid financial plan, an estate plan. We look at that as a couple. And we also look at it as if you become a widow or even a divorcee. Where is your income going to come from? What's the taxable nature of that income? And how is the estate going to look as a widow versus a couple? Also, we want to look at, are we going to divide the assets equally among the kids? Or do we have certain kids that are well off and certain kids that are more in need of the inheritance? Or what about grandchildren or friends or relatives that you want to leave money to? And do you have any children that may be not ready to handle an inheritance? A lot of times we will talk with families and they've got some of the kids are great and responsible, but maybe there's another child that's on drugs or in jail or just not ready to take on that inheritance. And the trust can really determine meeting certain parameters before that beneficiary gets the inheritance, whether it's getting a lump sum or meeting guidelines as far as graduating high school or college or getting the money over a period of time. And a trust can do that. And a special needs trust. We've got a couple that we're working with. She's got 2 daughters. One daughter is fine. She's a teacher. The other daughter is special needs and needs 24-hour care, and she's in a home. Well, if we were to leave money directly to that special needs child, she may lose some of her benefits. So if we have the special needs trust, now she can have the money that's allotted for her, but it's done through the trust, so she maintains her benefits. So we want to make sure you prepare your beneficiaries for their inheritance. We never want to talk about death, but we want to plan for the worst and hope for the best. So if we had a family visit where we talk about what would happen if you were not here anymore, And it's one thing to have your heart, have your desires and wishes, but to be able to share it with your family so that they understand what you want to have happen. And then have the trust as the living, breathing document that backs up what your wishes are. In part 4, work with advisors to put your wishes in writing. And when we work with a family alongside our estate planning attorney, we spend a few hours getting to know what are your goals, your needs, your resources, and putting that in writing. It's one thing to have it in your mind or in your heart as far as what you want, but to actually have it written out and in writing, that's completely different. And one of the things that we look at is the beneficiaries. And whether you're an existing client or you're coming new to us, one of the first things we want to do is verify, are your beneficiaries correct? We've had a circumstance where somebody last month came in and he's been married to his new wife for over 20 years. But when we looked at his beneficiary form on his IRA, he still had his ex-wife listed as the primary beneficiary. And that was definitely not his intent. So we were able to get an updated beneficiary form and get that fixed for him before it was too late. And we had another woman come in and she had a brokerage account that had no beneficiary listed. Well, if she passes away, now that goes through probate, which can be expensive. Attorneys get involved. It's public. So we want to make sure it's an easy fix to make sure your beneficiaries are listed the right way. Now, a lot of times people come in and they've got children they have listed as their beneficiaries. So let's say you've got 4 kids. Well, you don't want to just name your oldest child as 100% beneficiary, thinking that he's going to pass the money on to his siblings or her siblings, because any beneficiary that's listed is responsible for the taxable nature of that inheritance. So if we left it the wrong way to the oldest child, they're going to have the correct way is if you've got the 4 kids is typically you list them 25% each or in equal shares. So a lot of times we want to make sure that your wishes are met. So let's say you do have 4 kids and they're all listed equally and each of your kids have their children. So you've got grandkids. Well, what if one of your children predeceases you? So instead of 4 kids, now you've got 3. Well, the default is those 3 beneficiaries get a third each. Well, what did you just do by doing that? Well, you're disinherited your grandkids if that were to happen. And the way to fix that, and this is where I want you to grab a pen and write this phrase down. The phrase is per stirpes, PERSTIRPES. That's Latin for follows the bloodline. That's the only Latin I know, but that's Latin for follows the bloodline. So what that would do is it says if one of your children predeceases you, it follows the bloodline where that inheritance goes to your grandkids. So depending on what your wishes are, we can make sure, does that phrase per stirpes need to be listed on your beneficiary form? Now, if you have an IRA, you used to be able to have your beneficiary other than a spouse do what's called a beneficiary IRA or an inherited IRA, but that's no longer available. But what that did was allow you to spread the tax liability out over several years. And no matter what age you are, even if you're 30 years old and you get this inherited IRA, you still have to take required minimum distributions, but you get to defer it and pass it generation to generation, and that really can enhance the tax benefits. But starting January 2020, there is some tax law legislation that changed that. So now the IRS says there are no more stretch IRAs. The Secure Act came out and said we're going to cancel that. The new way of having an inherited IRA is you've got a 10-year window where you have to pull all the money out of that IRA account. So imagine if your children are the beneficiary of your IRA, and imagine how old would they be when they inherit that. Typically, what we see is they're going to be at their peak earning years. So they may have a high income tax bracket just from working. And in the future, taxes will most likely be at a higher rate than they are today. They've got a 10-year window where they have to pull all the money out of that IRA account. That's all taxable as ordinary income. And if they don't do that, there's a 50% penalty from the IRS. So that's where there's some additional planning that needs to be involved now, not only with the estate plan and the beneficiary, but what's the tax impact and how do we do that in the most efficient way? Another change with the Secure Act is the required minimum distribution age has increased. So it used to be at age 70 and a half, you've got to take required minimum distributions. Now it's age 72. So now we have some unique planning opportunities along that as well. And another thing is annuities are now going to be allowed in 401k plans. We're seeing more and more people retire today without a traditional pension. And one of the great benefits of a traditional pension is guaranteed lifetime income. But if you don't have a traditional pension, all you've got is your 401k, that's typically mutual funds. What if you accidentally live too long and you run out of money? That's a big fear. According to AARP, the number one fear of retirees above even death is outliving your money. So people retiring today with no traditional pension, they've got no guaranteed lifetime income, that can be worrisome. So the IRS says now you can have the annuities in the 401k that can provide a private pension that still provides that lifetime income. It gives you that assurance that no matter how long you live, you're going to be okay. Now, I'm from a place called Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. And growing up, I spent a lot of time with my great-grandma. I called her Great Mommy. And this here is a picture of Great Mommy on her 100th birthday. She passed away at 101, but I'd like to use Great Mommy as an example of one of the risks in retirement is longevity risk. What if we accidentally stay too healthy, we exercise, and we live too long? That's where that fear of outliving your money comes into play. So we want to make sure that no matter how long you live, whether it's as a couple, whether it's as a widow or a divorcee, no matter what the markets do, the volatility, no matter if taxes go up, that your income and your financial plan and estate plan is as solid as it can be, whether it's today or whether it's you live to be 101, like my great mommy. Now, when we look at estate planning, we look at tax planning, there's basically 4 different tax buckets. And the first one is the taxable bucket. That's checking, savings, money market, any money that you've already paid the tax on, and any interest we earn each year is taxable. The second bucket is the tax deferred bucket. So think about IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, retirement accounts. We put the money in and it's tax deferred. As that, imagine planting a seed that we haven't been taxed yet, and that seed grows, any distribution that comes out of that with the growth is taxed as ordinary income. And that's where the worry part is taxes go up at a higher rate. Any distribution is taxed, at a higher rate, netting less for you. So tax deferred. Also, annuities can be after tax money, but grow tax deferred. The third bucket is tax free. And this is where we talk about Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, municipal bonds, tax free. Regardless of tax rates going up or down, that's tax free, that's precious money. And even some properly structured cash value life insurance provides Roth-like benefits that are tax free. And then there's the fourth bucket, the income and estate tax free. So if you're married filing jointly, you've got an estate over $20 million, you may start having some estate tax in addition to the income tax. And basically, the more money you have, the more money you want to have shifted to the tax-free side. So that's where you want to start considering taking advantage of Roth IRAs. Roth IRAs are tax-free distributions, and there's no required minimum distributions with a Roth IRA. But you want to make sure you have outside money outside the IRA to pay taxes if you do a conversion. And if you're making over $184,000 a year, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA, but you can still do a conversion. So the idea of doing a contribution to an IRA or a Roth IRA, what's the difference to doing a conversion to a Roth IRA? Well, imagine that we have this spring, okay? And the spring is going to be the stock market investments that you have. And as the market grows, that spring is pulled further and further. So let's say in February 2020, you wanted to do a Roth conversion of about $100,000. Well, that would be about $24,000 in taxes with 24% bracket there. Well, the market has had some volatility. So that spring that used to be pulled wide is now condensed lower. So let's say your 100,000 is now worth 70,000. Well, now if we take advantage of that market volatility to work for you instead of against you, now we can pay taxes on 70,000, which is only $16,800. And eventually that's going to grow back to 100,000 and then grow more and more. That's all tax-free. Distributions tax-free, the gains are tax-free, go to your beneficiaries tax-free. And that can be done through the trust. Now, this is what we call the economic impact of losing a spouse. And again, 70 to 85% of the time, women outlive men. So let's look at this example where we've got an income need of $60,000 a year. The husband is getting $20,000 a year from Social Security, and the wife is getting $10,000 a year from Social Security. So together that's $30,000. And then they're pulling $30,000 a year out of the IRA, which is taxable. So that's $60,000. Well, with standard deductions and personal exemptions, their taxable income for $60,000 was $9,850. Taxes paid $985. Now again, let's talk about if the husband passed away first, you lose the lesser of the two Social Securities. So now the surviving spouse receives $20,000 a year of Social Security, losing the 10. So to make up that difference, she pulls out $40,000 out of the IRA, which is taxable as ordinary income, and $20,000 from Social Security. So same income, $60,000, but the difference is she's filing single versus married filing jointly. Another difference is she's pulling out $40,000 of taxable money out of the IRA versus $30,000. So that same $60,000 is now paying $5,594 of taxes. That's a huge difference. That's a huge estate planning problem. Had that been a conversion to a Roth, that $40,000 is tax-free of income, $20,000 of Social Security, $60,000 a year of income is only $343 of taxes paid. So what is your economic impact of losing a spouse? And that's one of the processes and questions we can help answer for you. Now, a will isn't always the way. You know, Colin mentioned earlier, a will is a ticket to probate. So assets can be transferred through titling, like POD, payable on death, or transfer on death. A lot of times brokerage accounts or bank accounts, you can do that. You can have direct beneficiaries listed. And a lot of times with an IRA, you want an individual to be your beneficiary. And if you properly structure your primary beneficiary, contingent beneficiary as an individual, they have some tax benefits taking that IRA over as their own. Or a trust. A trust helps avoid probate, and there's a lot of structure and control that a trust can help provide. We want to make sure all accounts and wishes are coordinated and updated. And some estates are simple, where you don't really need to have a trust. Others are complicated, where a trust needs to be included to meet what your wishes are. And attorneys and financial advisors, we can make you aware of possibilities and contingencies in certain scenarios that you may have not thought of. And we could look at what is your current scenario now, but what if we had another area where you're a widow now, or the market dropped 30%, or taxes increased, and make sure that you're still going to be okay. So family legacy, leaving behind a piece of yourself, making your life count. Here's some ideas. You know, a lot of times you have these memories in your mind, but write them down on paper. Pass those great memories and vacation things that you've done with your family and grandkids. Put it together in a scrapbook and photo album. You know, keep that memory alive. Whether it's a favorite recipe or some of your hobbies like gardening or woodworking, make that something that can be passed on as something special. A big thing you want to do is monitor and update your plan. Like my great mommy back in Illinois, she lived to be 101. When she was 30 years old, when she was 50, things were a lot different with her plan than when she was 101. So we want to stay up to date with the ever-changing things that happen in life, where people get married, divorced, or pass away. Grandkids get born. You change your mind about something. We had one lady changed her beneficiaries 3 times in 1 year just because somebody made her upset. Then they worked it out. You have the ability to do that. we don't want the wrong people inheriting your money. Having the wrong beneficiary or no beneficiary listed, that can have a detrimental impact to years of planning that you've been wanting to do. So it's one thing to learn and educate yourself, but it's another thing to implement what you've learned. And a lot of times people say, hey, I've already got a plan. Well, we trust you. We trust that you may have a plan, but let's verify that your plan has gone through the 5 comprehensive areas of financial planning. The estate plan, the legacy plan, having a will and a trust, that ties everything up together. But you want to make sure you've had your income plan looked at with Social Security maximization and longevity. We want to make sure your investments match where your heart is as far as your comfort level of risk, and how are they designed to provide the income that you need. And tax planning. We teach a whole course on tax planning in retirement, because taxes affect your investments, taxes affect your income. In healthcare, with long-term care, nursing home, home health care, Medicare, we want to make sure healthcare is included with that plan. And then with the estate plan and legacy planning, that's where we can morally, legally, and ethically disinherit the IRS, avoid probate, and keep more money in your family to the people that you love and care about. So we're going to have another offer popped up here. This is our Calendly link. So the offer is going to pop up, and you can click on their schedule now. The first step is a phone call, and we can have some ideas, answer some specific questions for you. But this course was designed to be 2 parts. The first part is in a group setting like this, and the second part is one-on-one, whether it's a phone call or Zoom or an in-person visit, where it's still education. It's still, we're not going to sell you anything, but that's where we can get more specific, walk you through that process, and figure out where are you now and where do you want to be, and are you on track? Or are there some other areas that you need to complement and help protect what you've worked so hard for? So on our first visit, what's going to happen? We're going to have that discussion as far as what are your goals, needs, and resources, what's important to you. And what you'll learn is either you're on track or there's some areas that we need to fix. You're going to feel so confident when it's over that you took the time and due diligence to do your education today, but then also you took the time to implement and say, hey, how can I make that work for me instead of against me? And again, as a fiduciary, we're not going to sell you anything. What we're going to do is find out what is important to you, what are the strategies that need to complement your goals, and have that discussion with you. And really simply, there's 3 possibilities. 1, we decide we like each other, we want to work together, and we discuss specific ideas. 2, we like each other, but the timing isn't right, so we set a date to follow up in the future. Or 3, we decide we don't like each other, call each other names, and you leave screaming. And that's never happened. So again, our office is right off of Alma School in Southern, and we're on the 11th floor of what used to be called the Bank of America building. And again, with COVID, we understand the safety protocols, so we are wearing masks, we are keeping our office clean, but we are offering either a phone call or a Zoom, or if you'd like to come in and talk to us face-to-face, we'd love to see you as well. But I encourage you to take advantage of at least a phone call. Let us answer some questions for you and get specific. And speaking of questions, as we're finishing up tonight, I have your click there, schedule now button still up on the screen, but we have our Q&A. So if anybody has any questions before we finish our webinar today, type those in and we'll make sure that we get those answered. And we do have a handout too. So we have a PDF download of the process and additional information that we can get you as well. And I do have the first question here from Cece. Is there a cost for the visit? And the answer is no. We do not have a fee or a cost for the visit. The class 567 estate planning, we're proud to be an educator with that. And with that education class is an obligation as us to be able to have that visit with you. And initially there's not going to be a cost. If we continue on the process, we can have a discussion about how we get compensated down the road. Let's see here. What do I need to bring to my visit? Typically, if you've got a will or a trust already established, have that with you. If you have any statements, brokerage accounts, if you have, IRA accounts, anything like that, we can put together a clear picture of what you currently have. And then we understand what your goals are, and then we could put together recommendations based on that. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending today. We'll reach out to you with a follow-up phone call or email, and we'll have this also recorded. So if you have a friend or a neighbor or somebody that might think this is of interest to them, we can get a copy of this email to you, and you can share that along with them. But we want to thank you so much for attending. Give us a call. Our number here is 480-565-4363. We do have our Facebook page that you can check out, and then you can see upcoming events throughout the year as well. But thank you again for attending, and we look forward to talking with you all very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.